Hey gang, welcome to Writer's Scoop number 2 from Module 2, and this week I want to talk to you a little bit about voice. You hear that name or that abstraction thrown around a lot in writing, particularly with poetry. This is not going to be a poetry exclusive unit, but I wanted to base this Writer's Scoop a little bit on poetry because I think we have a tendency to believe in some sort of true voice in terms of poets. When we think of fiction or screenwriting, I don't know if we really think of Quentin Tarantino's voice. He has a directing style. He has a sort of a certain penchant for dialogue or musical choices or narrative, but I really wouldn't call that a voice. Nor would I call often fiction writers. We don't really say, "Oh, so and so's voice is really great in this novel." No, and I think it's more style, right? Prose style. But in poetry we often do. And this goes way back, as you'll read in this chapter this week. This goes way back to the Romantics. This is hundreds of years old. This idea that poets have to speak from some inner self, that poetry is some, as Wordsworth called, spontaneous overflow of powerful emotion. That when you speak from your true inner being, what you get is poetry and anything else is not. Okay, so it's very indicative of the way that we view poetry. Now, it may not be the way you view poetry, and I think our text will challenge this idea a little bit that poetry, that poets have some unique voice that they have to access, that part of poetry is finding this inner being inside of you and letting the emotions pour out. I think we will challenge that a little bit, and I encourage you to do so too. But for this week, just to start out, a 200-word post to our discussion board, and I want you to talk about how you view poetry in relation to voice. That is, do you see poetry as some rage for authenticity? What does that mean? Do you see poetry as a desire to get in touch with some inner being and to speak for that true inner being that is exceptional and unique in every way, right? Or do you believe that poetry, just like fiction, just like screenwriting, is much more protean, and that people probably don't really have one voice? There is no such thing as an inner being. There are multiple beings and beingness that poets can embody and give voice to. So there are the two choices, and you can play around with them. You can kind of deconstruct this either or choice that I'm giving you. But talk about that in your discussion. 200 words on how you see the relationship between one person's voice and poetry. Is it a unique quest for some true self, right? That's what poetry is. That's what it gives voice to. Or is it, on the other hand, something much more rangy, something rangier, something protean, something that's able to shape shift and take many different forms? Poets have multiple voices that they can exploit. There's your response. I'll post it too underneath this video so you can read it again before you put it to the discussion board.